Growth Charity 16 Spiritual Friendships in the Second Remains. Copie traduit en anglais de croissance charite 16 les amitiés spirituelles dans la 2 degrees de mer, 3 mn. Are spiritual friendships useful in this second home? So do droughts happen? The answer is yes. I would say that if we were not trained ourselves, so by Saint Teresa of Avila, how to understand that in fact these droughts are a natural phenomenon. That we cannot give ourselves entirely to the search for the Lord without, at a given moment, possibly having done too much. And so if we share this experience with someone who is on the same path, which tells very simply, without being ashamed, how sometimes he gets bored at Mass. Let him go sometimes, to prayer, I would say in the imaginary. That sometimes he goes to prayer so it's prayer exercises and that just installed he falls asleep to wake up at the end of the time that was reserved. You have to know how to admit it. And by confessing things, yield. To understand that this is a normal phenomenon. Very often, alas, I would say, Christians who gave themselves to God dare not confess, how shall I say, their own weaknesses. So that they condemn each other to live in shame, from the lack of what he believes to be a lack of fervor. And which is actually only the second home. So obviously, when one can come across a spiritual friendship from someone experienced, someone who has been trained in mystical theology, I would say, at age 40, 50 years of spiritual practice. So there will be advice, good advice. One can speak at that moment of a father or a spiritual mother. Is this father where this spiritual mother has to be a priest? No, it does not matter. It has nothing to do with ordination. It should. An ordained person should have studied Saint Teresa of Avila to help the day she has contemplative people. But, in fact, it can be a religious someone who is experienced in the life of prayer. But also a layman. Especially in our day when we need spiritual guide so much because the number of consecrated people decreases. So this spiritual guide, this counselor, will carefully help, I would say, distinguish what comes from laziness and what comes from drought. To put in place a fair timetable. Something balanced with his spiritual life.